Hey, I was thinking as well, whilst you've been in New Zealand for several days, a week or so, I'm sure you've been, a lot of your television work especially is topical and is based around the news, been keeping an eye on what's going on in America. In your
Yeah.
Netflix special, when you rewrite the national anthem, you talk about giving Donald Trump a lobotomy. I'm wondering
Yeah.
if he's basically had a self-imposed lobotomy, especially in the last week around what's happened at the Capitol building, and if you got any thoughts around that, what you saw and what you're thinking is going on at the moment.
What was really fascinating was he said let's wander down to Washington, I'll be with you. And then he wasn't. And then but the speech that he gave afterwards where he said, you need to go home now and you need to be law abiding and whatnot. That felt like he'd been given a chat by somebody. That really felt like, look, fucking cut your shit. It was so fascinating to see. I've never seen him. It was chalk and cheese. That's what blew my mind. Bill Hicks had a routine once about the state of American politics, which was, here's what the puppet on the right thinks, here's what the puppet on the left thinks. Oh, there's one guy holding up both puppets, and he had this image of Bill Clinton walking in, and suddenly there's these guys in shades, and they show an assassination of JFK from an angle that nobody's ever seen before. And then the tape finishes, and they say to Clinton, "Any questions?" And he just goes, "Just what my agenda is." And it reminded me of that. It just felt like, whoa, like someone's had a word, and it felt like this could never have happened, but it did. And there was a flicker of like, oh wow, what's gone on there? That's what it left with me. It was that feeling of like, geez, man, who's who's been able to get through what's been said that's made him go, oh, okay, yep, sure. That was the most
I reckon there
fascinating.
can only be one thing, and that's possible jail. Although I don't think those guys who are up the front talking, him and Giuliani and those guys, Giuliani might be in trouble because he talked about a trial by combat. The word
Yeah.
combat can't really be spun any other way. It's not like we go, oh, my kid's got cancer, but, they're going to have combat with it, but you might say they're going to fight it hard. So the word fight has a relativity to it. I don't know if the word combat does.
Mm.
But all those words that they've used from up the front, I reckon that they'll be left alone. And as we're already seeing, all the guys under them, all the guys who went into the Capitol will be thrown under the bus. I have to say, what is delightfully, if you haven't seen it yet, go onto TikTok or maybe even YouTube and look up No Fly List. And a whole bunch of the people that stormed the Capitol building are now being put on a no fly lists because they're being accused of being domestic terrorists. And I saw
Wow.
one the other day, and it's disgusting. And if I had it, I'd play it. It's disgusting, but it just shows the mentality of the people. One of the guys, one individual male, was on a no-fly list. He was on the ground in an airport with police on top of him, screaming, "You're treating me like a black person."
Right.
I kind of go, that's the mental. That's what people have been saying all this time, and now it's like there's no more filter. You're just saying out there the truth that everyone's been trying to get across for the last 5 years.
Mm. And you're sort of left with this feeling of like, geez, man, how do you how are you able to try and reconcile a nation when people are so entrenched in kind of their ideologies? Like, how do you read how like that is the undertaking. And and you sort of, because even the truth now is a the truth basically depends on the filter through which you receive it.
Mm.
Like so, like it's like it's that they remind me a bit of like, if you've got like hecklers at a comedy club who are shit faced, you just can't reason with them. Do you know what I mean? You can't go, well, the coronavirus is real. No, it's not. Okay, like, do you know what I mean? You're never gonna change their opinion, and yet it has to be someone's job to try and heal, and you kind of heal and reconcile. You think, fuck man, that's a tough old gig in the States at the minute, where people genuinely believe that there is this shadow government that has babies delivered to Oprah Winfrey's house, and they drink the baby's blood to look young. People believe that, you know what I mean? And it's just like, but they believe it. What blows my mind is that they think people like Hillary Clinton, apparently the reason why they look so young is because they drink baby's blood. But surely the proof of that is Hillary Clinton's face, because she looks like a normal 70-year-old woman. She's particularly youthful. Do you know what I mean? You know what I mean? So it's like, to me as a comic, you're like, what the fuck? It's like, I would get it if it was somebody like super young looking, but she looks like a fucking 7-year-old woman, you know? But like I say, you're screaming at the wind and asking it to turn a different way. It's a difficult undertaking.
I you look at work like the guy Jordan Klepper, who's still working for the Daily Show, and the good work he's doing, kind of walking around some of the Trump protests. But I got a fright the other day. It might have been yesterday, actually. So this is 2 or 3 days after this attempted coup, and Glenn Beck passed across my Facebook feed, and there was some comment on there, about what should we do now to bring the country together after 3 years of, fanning the flames. And I, for the first time in my life, wrote a little comment on the thing saying, I remember that day that Glenn Beck donned the red cap and said, I'm now on Team Trump. And I'm like, you've lost all credibility, yada, yada, yada. And the number of people in America who responded to me saying, you can't call a victory yet, just wait and see what happens over the next couple of days. This isn't over. I'm like, fuck, these people are real. These people are real, and they're still thinking Trump's going to be president after the 20th. And it's not a small number of people.
And it's this, what's sort of saddening and maddening and bewildering is that it's exactly the same in the UK, but you have a situation where somehow people who have nothing believe that this billionaire is on their side. And it's exactly the same in the UK. You have someone like Jacob Rees-Mogg, who is this multi-millionaire who, in order to improve our country, we have to leave Europe. It's the only thing we have to do. This kind of bizarre creature that looks like he belongs wandering corridors in a stately home, is on the same side of, yeah, that's right, mate, we need to get our country back. And it's this horrible thing where people that in the UK, all they want to do is free the markets up so they can make a bunch of money. They bewitched people, and that's the hardest point. It's like, how do you win those back, and like, how do you bring people together? And you kind of think, well, it's sort of fundamentals. It's sort of sport. It's music. It's food. It's family. It's like, it's almost like you have to start building the things that are deeply human, because there's like, what the fuck's happened in the States where the only metric through which people are being judged at the minute is like, you blue or red.
Yeah.
Talking about that, like, there's a myriad of reasons and things that sort of define you, and it's such a small part, and yet that is the only thing. And the crazy thing for me, and I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but I kind of watch what's happening in America, and you go, why aren't you talking about coronavirus? Like, this is the story. It's like, and also with Trump, there was an opportunity for, if Trump had dealt with corona, if he'd have put all his mind and soul into that, he genuinely could have laid claim to be one of the greatest presidents of all time, because the 360-degree turn that he kind of went, it was like, it's just struck me as like, you have a real opportunity through which to define yourself, and you truly did put America first, and he didn't, you know what I mean? He just carried on with the same playbook, and it's like, it's bad in the UK, it's even worse in the States, and they're not even talking about it. Like, for all the flaws in the UK, we're still having a prime minister that's talking with a scientific advisor next to him, and an army officer next to him, talking about how we're going to get the vaccine. They don't even have that in the States.
Yeah.
Like, Fauci hasn't been on the news for months. There's no communication about corona, and that is the head fuck. That it's like, how can you be the leader of the country, and you're still talking about the election. You have a job to do, man. You've got to, you have to try and get the vaccine out. You have to try and test people. You have to try and do something. But it just seems so laissez-faire over there. It's freaky.
I like that you use the word metric as well, because that's something I often say to American contributors, or, I've had a few sort of American right wingers on the podcast, and I always ask them, is America the greatest country in the world? And they always say yes. And I say, what's your metric for that? How do you measure that? Because if you look at most things that can be proven statistically, it's pretty hard to lay that claim up. And I had on, got a professor here in Dunedin who's a professor of politics, and he specialises in American politics. And we had a bit of a mental breakdown the other day when we were going off over the Capitol building. And I said, can we stop talking about America being the greatest democracy in the world? The suppression of the votes, the gerrymandering of the borders so Republicans can get in, the country where the people, the party that gets the most votes doesn't become the president. All these sorts of things. It's all nonsense, and it's time to approach them like we should be, which is a very broken country in reality, not the greatest country in the world. It might be the richest country in the world. They might have the best military in the world, but they're not the greatest country in the world. And the reason you know that is very few other Western countries would want to emulate what's happening in America. And all you need to do is look at New Zealand. I mean, you are going to be the beneficiary of, and I say this touching wood because no one says this is over yet, but at the minute, how we've handled COVID. And you've got full houses coming up. I'm going to the Otago cricket game on Thursday where there'll be several thousand people watching the game. This is a country and a government and a particular prime minister that has done it well. And again, I'm not being arrogant. It could be different in 6 months from now, but as of today, that's done it right.
Yeah, and it sort of strikes me it's that you've hit that sweet spot of liberalism and conservatism. That clearly it's she's you're really strict, and it's really authoritative, but so that people can have a normal life. So do you know what I mean? It's this like, right, no fucking around here, these are the rules, but once you're out, yeah, cool, yeah, and that's it isn't like, it's really funny sometimes the way that other countries are portrayed, of like, oh, you know what I mean, it's all, do you know what I mean, it's super kind of liberal and it's easy, over here. And you kind of go, no, there are rules in place, people follow the rules, and then once you've done that, cool, and kind of also in Australia, they've been pretty harsh on it as well. That's working. So what are we dealing with? 4.5 million people in New Zealand that are able to, as you say, currently live a normal life through a mixture of intellect and conservatism and liberalism. Like, do you know what I mean? And like, it strikes me that's the name of the game. It's sort of like, if you can find that sweet middle spot, that's what makes a country great. It isn't just GDP, it's, I don't know, but the thing is, it's like, how do you get there? How do you get to that level where where people are genuinely together? I think the last time the UK was really, really tight was the Olympics in 2012.
Right.
That had a huge impact. And it's funny, isn't it? Like you say, little things like that, oddly bring the nation together. It's like sport, music, food, football, comedy. It's weird, man. But those things, they do, like, you sort of think like, Derek Trotter falling through a bar in Only Fools and Horses. That was like this weird glue for the country. Do you know what I mean? Or like The Office, or Gavin and Stacey, or Fawlty Towers, or Monty Python. And like, it's really strange that it would be great to have a time where politicians can be a bit quiet and just be like invisible referees, and they can let people get on with their lives, because it just feels like Brexit has dominated our news, and newspapers can write clickbaity articles about it and can convince people that this is a really important issue where fundamentally people want to be happy, they want their loved ones to be okay, and they want to have a decent life, and it's that simple. Do you know what I mean? That you like there was a survey done how people, I think something like 10 years ago, like what were major grievances of British people, and Europe was like 0.02%.
Right.
Fast forward 10 years, suddenly it's everything. We need to, that's what we got to do. If we leave Europe, it'll all be fine. And it's because it's that age old thing as a politician. You find angry people, you tell them you understand their anger, you find something to point their anger out, and you walk away. And you just repeat that, and it always wins. And it's just time to kind of maybe turn the volume down on politicians and just say like and maybe not make it front page and just have a fucking break.